This is ATL Day Ones, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Welcome into ATL Day Ones with Jarvis. And Tanisha want to just say thank you for making ATL Day Ones your first listen today. And remember, we are free and available wherever you download your podcast. Wherever you download your podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star review because we don't hide greatness on this show, and you should not as well. Today is also want to let y'all know that we are now on Amazon Fire and Roku. So if you want to check out our mugs on the big screen, go ahead and download those apps and check us out there. We are there for you Monday through Friday. T, the Hawks got drugged last night. Are the Raptors the Hawks' kryptonite? And Terry Fontenot has a special deadline coming up. We will talk about whether or not he's going to make a move, or if he does make one, should it be a big one or a little one? And last but not least, and for the culture, rest in peace, Takeoff. But before we get there, we definitely have to talk about the Hawks getting drugged last night. T, I think that you should put your Swami hat, like you know how the little turbans that Andre 3000 likes to wear and everything like that, because you called this bad boy OG Anunoby. My goodness, he watched the show and just like, you know what? If you believe me, then I can do it too, because that dude absolutely went off in that first quarter. T, oh goodness gracious!
Right. He was one of the guys who I had hoped, prayed, and wished the Hawks would have gone after. Because
Right.
all day, every day. Every time I had to do keys to the game when it was a Raptors game at State Farm, I just cringed because I was like, he never disappoints as far as Raptors go. And then you called it the other way, which was Pascal Siakam. Now, the thing about Pascal Siakam is the Hawks have actually had a decent, and I do not say great, but a decent amount of success with him. But it was interesting because what I do think happened last night as to one of the reasons Pascal Siakam was able to do what he did is because, A, you can run an offense through a big. Like, you could actually get that big to bring a ball up the court. Like, that is so serious. You can put that big at any place. This dude shot a 3 from the top of the key, and I was like, okay, we're done here. I mean, just
like bro, what we playing? Pick up basketball? Like, somebody touch the man, foul him or do something.
There you go. And for me, that was the thing. Like, I don't care where he is. Maybe a big isn't going to chase him out to maybe Clint. JC, you should have chased him out. But anyway, maybe not 00, definitely not Clint Capella chasing him out to that 3-point line, or even if you try to get a 17-footer in there. But I love what you just said. Put a body on him. I don't care whose body. Put a body on him, because they play a very slight physical game, because they're not the biggest team, but they play physically for the team that they are. And the other thing is,
they just got a lot of long dudes.
That's what I was going to say.
A lot of long dudes on the squad.
You cannot grow. Man, whatever height you are right now, Hawks,
that's what it is. Yes.
So what they're going to have to do, because you got these guys, a couple more times this year, the Hawks are really going to have to figure out maybe how to play a game of small ball and kind of force the game into a space that is comfortable with them. So if that ends up being that you've got to outscore them, then that's what you need to do. I think they'll probably be able to do that when they get Bogey back. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. But before I talk about the bench, I wanted to hear from you, because you called the other side, which was Siakam.
And that's the thing. Like, it was almost as if he wanted to, he was going through progressions in his game. It's like, all right, in the first quarter, I'm gonna box him up, you know what I'm saying, getting down on the block. And then the second quarter, then I'm start getting to working on my mid range. Then the third quarter, I'm gonna start taking him out the dribble. And then the fourth quarter, I ain't gonna be in because we're gonna be up by 30 anyway. So 139 to 109 was the final score. It was almost like Pascal Siakam, like, literally wrote out a script on how this game was gonna go, because that's how he was absolutely. Now, John, JC, I need you to do a little bit better than that, bro. Like, because he's been playing at. I wouldn't say that if he wasn't playing at the level that he was defensively.
Yes.
And I think that you saw some kind of lapses from time to time, and it got to a point where he kind of just wrapped them up, and I was just like, man, dude, you should have started doing that a little bit early, because that's some of the things that you have to kind of take into account. And you talk about long dudes, right? Not only Siakam was able to get off, Scotty Barnes was out there comfortable doing his thing, just going to work. And I'm just like, then they just got hot from three. And it was just like, it was nothing that the Hawks could do. And I think that the Raptors do that to them. Like they make them, that's why I mentioned, said they, it's almost like they're their kryptonite, because every time they go up against the Raptors, it's always some guy, whether it be a Precious, a guy named Precious, or Gary Trent Jr. out here just going crazy. And I'm just like, what is going on? So obviously the Hawks are still trying to find their way. And I think that it's going to be a situation where you're gonna probably maybe look to beat them the other type of way. And hopefully you have that when you talk about Bogdanovich potentially making a return.
Right. And I also think two things, like you said, Bogdanovich will make a return and at least give you some offensive firepower, which is good. And then maybe you can get a little bit more defensively once you get the anchor for that bench mob. Once you get the anchor for the second unit, then you can start plugging them in more effectively, because essentially he's the leader of that unit and he's the one who's going to teach them, hey, here's where you need to be, here's where you need to go, that sort of thing, sort of like that general that we used to see in Lou Williams last year. But the other thing that I believe is a kryptonite for the Hawks, and they have to figure it out, because the league is going to a defensive game of switching. The league is shifting that way. So you've got to be prepared when those teams start doing switches. And of course, that's a part of how Trae Young gets 10 of the 24 turnovers, because the team just does not react to the switches. And so again, now granted, the Raptors are one of the best in the league to be able to switch defensively. We saw it with the Heat as well. They do a great job of just switching up on defense. But yeah, those switches, I think that's a sort of kryptonite that somehow Nate McMillan will have to address too.
Yeah, and it's good that it's happening early on in the season, so he can have the opportunity once the next go around, because like I said, Toronto Raptors aren't the only team that can do that. Like we saw it last year in the playoffs against the Miami Heat. Those are some of the things that you brought guys like DeJounte Murray in for, and I think the solution may be potentially Double O getting a little bit more time, so you can do those things as well to kind of throw teams off and have that as an option defensively. Now, T, speaking of not having options, we just found out that Georgia Bulldogs, Nolan Smith, senior outside linebacker / edge guy, projected first rounder, guy who was on his way to having a really good season, putting the quarterback down to raise that stock. We found out that he has a torn pec tee and he will likely done for the season.
Hate that.
Man, when you coming up against a Tennessee team that is lighting the scoreboard up and trying to find every which way to get in the end zone as soon as possible, I think this might be something that they're going to have to deal with, T.
Oh, yeah, because you lose on the field a guy who's amongst your leaders when it comes to sacks, tackles, and QB hurries, but also you lose the leader of that team, kind of the heart and soul, if you will, because this is a guy who decided to come back. Granted, mama said go back and get the degree, but this is a guy who came back to do more damage, and he was doing damage until unfortunately that situation came. Now, good news is at least the Dogs have Jalen Carter back. That's something. That's not going to be the complete panacea. And then you have Robert Beal Jr. and Chaz Chambliss, I think it is, who came in and took who came in and took some very credible snaps, because Nolan Smith went down so early. So actually, that might have been a good thing, because you've now got those guys who at least have one big game under their belts. And then, of course, Mykel Williams, the freshman, also is somebody, I was talking to our guy, Randy Mack, and I was like, okay, Randy, I said, tell me what you think about Beal, about Chambliss, and about Mykel Williams. And he really liked what Mykel Williams is able to do, understands that he's a freshman, but he said that guy may just be able to give Georgia something this weekend.
No doubt about it, because and it kind of sucks because of basically, I know, mama said go back to school, but I think Nolan Smith wanted to prove that, hey, he can be a guy that can get some sacks and, like I said, raise that stock, because he was at 3.5 sacks last year and he had 3 right now and was still quite a few games ago, including the college football playoffs. Yes, I'm assuming Georgia's going to do that. So I think that's something that it's kind of unfortunate that he kind of goes out like this. In this manner, but like you said, Georgia is Georgia for a reason.
Yes,
they got 5 stars waiting in the wings. So hey, it's time when it's time for those guys to play. Obviously, you would prefer for them to have to wait as long as possible, because you have viable pieces already in there. But hey, when these things like this happen, it's time for the young pups to step up. So, and I think they will, because Georgia just has so much talent on that defense, on that up and down that defensive front. So I'm not too concerned. Now, T, what you need to be concerned about, or whoever is trying to win some money needs to be concerned about, is going to betonline.net, because it is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You're trying to figure out what the line is for Georgia, Tennessee, because I know you're going to be watching. You have to watch, because it is all the eyes going to be on in Athens, right there when Georgia gets ready to take on the Tennessee Volunteers. Josh Heupel has that high-powered offense. You're trying to figure out like what's the over/under, because I know Georgia can put up some points. Tennessee can put up some points. Which one is going to be able to get to what that number that they need to get to in order to win that money? Guess where you can go to? The top online source for all your sports wagering information. That's BetOnline, for live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. You guys listen to us for all your Atlanta sports information, Athens too. Why don't you go ahead and go to betonline.net and get all the information? They have podcasts ready and waiting for you wherever you get your podcast. Now, head to BetOnline today, or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today, because BetOnline is where the game starts.
And speaking of where the game starts, it kind of starts today, and really kind of started yesterday, right? And that is because the NFL trade deadline is looming. 4 p.m. Eastern time today is when all trades have to be finalized. And it kind of started to trickle down yesterday. And granted, we know that it's not nearly the excitement and the shocks of an NBA or an MLB trade, not even in the least, right?
But
it's had a little bit of an uptick when you think about Robert Quinn, and that was kind of close to the deadline, not necessarily, at the deadline, but that was a big name. But even a bigger name here, because we talked about him earlier in the season when Roquan Smith said, "Get me up out of the shy." So when he started talking about that, everybody, including the Atlanta metro area, started talking about that former dog. And it turns out he's actually going to a space. As a Steelers fan, it devastates me, but I think it's a great fit for Roquan Smith up in Baltimore, and I think he's going to do big things. Now, but the big thing for us is that we're looking at Flowery Branch to see what is going to happen, if anything, at this trade deadline. Now, they're in a peculiar situation that maybe even they didn't expect to be, which is the top of the NFC South, going into the 9th game of the season. So that puts them in contention. They're right there in the thick of things. So with that in mind, Jarvis, I mean, would you say, and also based on some of the injuries that they have, players returning, players who are going to be out for a couple of weeks, I mean, I think if they make a move, it's probably going to be minor, but what do you think?
To be honest with you, I think there's a minor move to be made. I'm not real big into major moves, because I know a lot of people, throwing names like Bradley Chubb out there. Now, granted, he's a really good football. He's a good football player, but he's in the last year of his contract, and that man is trying to get paid. So I'm always buyer beware when it comes to those guys, because when you think about going through a rookie contract, most of the time, as far as it's a 4-year deal at least, and then if you're in the first round, you have that 5th-year option, and you get into your last year of your deal, and you're just now proving that you belong and you were worth that pick. I have concerns. I have questions. So, I'm not necessarily saying I'm not going to pay the person, but I will have to go through a thought process as to whether or not I want this guy on my team, because I have to think about whether or not I'm going to get that consistent play. With that being said, Terry Fontenot, stay away from guys like that. Stay away from guys like that. Guys you need to look at are guys who are veterans, who've been in the league for quite some time, or on a couple contracts, guys who aren't looking for that much amount of money. A guy that maybe be in the last year of his contract, that is probably looking to play for a couple more years in the NFL, because that's where you still need to. I know people are already talking about, oh, you got all this money. Like, you got to pay folks. It's up people coming up for contracts here. How about the best guard, probably the best guard in the NFL? Yep, that's Chris Lindstrom. Yeah, that's here. So, buyer beware. And also, you got A.J. Terrell, the dude who's down right now, the dude who was the second highest rated cornerback last year, right behind Jalen Ramsey. Yeah, you got to get paid too. Exactly. So, calm down on, we got all this money. I understand what you're saying, but when you think about taking care of your people first before you go out there and spending money on other folks, you don't have as much as you think. So, I'm with the minor move, T. But as far as anything major and
Right.
bringing in guys or who's going to be around here for a long time, no, I'm cool on that right now. I prefer you go get those guys yourself in the draft next year.
Agreed. And they can say, oh, we'll make a major move for a guy who will be around for a long time. But you don't know that. You absolutely don't know that, because it really kind of is like rent a player for the back half of the season.
Right.
And
exactly.
I'd rather, and again, not to sound negative, but this is still a teeter-tottering NFC South. Anything can happen on the backside of this season. Tom Brady could get his head right. They'll have players coming back for the Bucs from injuries.
The offensive line can figure out how to block. You know, you never know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because remember, they had an O-line. You know, they had an O-line. And Donovan Smith, for example, is still Donovan Smith. He may have some moments, but he's still there, and there's still a good wide receiver core. So they still have core pieces that can put them right back in the mix. So then the question becomes, if it's a kind of an up and down situation as far as getting in the playoffs and probably getting to the postseason, the only route for the Falcons is probably NFC South, because you have so many other teams that are probably going to get that wild card spot before the Falcons could. So if that's the case, then you have to decide, is it really worth it? Because like you said, you've got players here already that you need to take care of. And then there may be some free agents who are available next season that you're like, nah, I'm just going to wait to see what they're about, who's available, and see if I can get them into a 2 to 3 year contract or 5-year contract that works best for this team. Now, speaking of what might work best, I say, Jarvis says that ATL Day Ones works best for you guys all the time. And I mean, that's what you say, because you always give us 5-star reviews, and we appreciate you for that. But you know what else works for you is if you don't just stop here at ATL Day Ones, a part of the Locked On Atlanta network, but if you also take a listen to Locked On Sports Today. The reason being, think about what we just talked about. The biggest stories of the day, they're going to be breaking down everything that has happened today and leading up to this trade deadline, instant reactions. They'll talk about some big games, and the big games, Jarvis, they might actually switch from what they would have been just a day ago based on some of these moves of players. So if you want to get that kind of information, and then you want to have a little fun with it as well, because they've got their version of For the Culture like we have on ATL Day Ones, and the Locked On Today crew is definitely for you. They're going to give you their take of the day. And just like you get us on your Odyssey app or YouTube or wherever you download your podcasts, that's where you can get Locked On Sports Today as well. Now, Jarvis, this is another thing that I thought of too. When you think about where you can get that player from, right? Whether that's a rent a player or whether that's somebody that might have some permanent implications. But here's something that could be, I think, could be an option for the Falcons as well, that I know I certainly would be okay with. What if they don't make a move at all? What if they don't make a move at all? Because when Terry Fontenot goes to make those calls or receive calls, the numbers just don't add up. It just does not make sense for the Falcons. So that's another option for them, is to just stand pat at the trade deadline.
I'm with you. I would be perfectly fine with that, because here's the thing. Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, one thing about those, I know for a fact that those guys are on the same page, is the fact that they trust the guys they brought in on this 53. They trust that roster to the death. And I understand it, because I see the talent. You know, they not to sit up here and say like they have the best roster in the NFL. I'm not saying that, but they do have guys, just in case their starters go down, that, you know, hey, they could be viable fill-ins, and that's all you need. That's how, when you're building, constructing a roster, that's all you need, you know, to be honest with you, from a general manager standpoint. So I think that I would be perfectly fine with that, but I think the main thing is making sure that you do your due diligence, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you give a certain round, or let's say a 4th round pick for a guy. You're like, oh yeah, it's a 4th round pick, but guess what? That draft comes around and they end up getting a guy that might be somebody that can help out a Grady Jarrett, or might be a guy that can supplant Lorenzo Carter. Oh, we don't need you this year. We got somebody else on this side of the field as well. So it just, those are the type of things that you have to think about when making these moves, because there's value in the 4th round. There's value in the 5th round. You know how we know it's value in the 5th round? Because Grady Jarrett, the guy I just mentioned, was really good. He was drafted in the 5th round out of Clemson. So and I think the Falcons have done a good job of finding value in those later rounds. So I don't think those picks should be throwaway picks for guys who aren't going to be around for a long time.
I would agree as well. And also, you think about the fact that Cordero Patterson is on his way back. You think about who the Falcons will be playing over the course of the next few weeks as it leads into the bye. Teams like my Steelers, teams like the Bears, teams like the Panthers, they get to see them again in 2 weeks. So, and I think that some of the things that we saw in the game Sunday, I do expect the Falcons to make some adjustments, just like I'm sure the Panthers will do. But my point being, if you have a quote unquote soft schedule as you're awaiting the return of players like an AJ Terrell or a Casey Hayward, then yeah, if the numbers don't line up for you, if the math ain't mathing for Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, then if they come back 401 today and there's absolutely nobody that they picked up, certainly okay for that, because we know that those guys do a great job at looking at the bigger picture and doing what's right for the Falcons organization, not just for the short term, but for the long term as well. Now, speaking of doing what's right, if you guys are looking at doing what's right for your body in not just the short term, for the long term, let me suggest you go for Built Bar Puffs. Yes, because these guys are always looking for the long-term situation and what's going to help us out. So the new favorite, as we've talked about to you guys before, but it could be new to you, is cookie dough chunk puffs. They're very light, chewy texture, kind of takes you back to your childhood, and they're 100% chocolate. But the biggest deal for them is that you're talking about 160 calories. And I looked at a drink that I had this morning at work, and I was thinking to myself, I know I didn't just drink 80 calories. Like, I know I didn't just drink 90 calories. I know I didn't just drink 100 calories. At least here, if you're going with 160 calories, at least you're getting 15 grams of protein. And it's not just any protein, but it's the kind of protein that absorbs into your system very easily. So just remember, healthy, tasty, that's a win-win for you. And look, we love the Chunky Puffs. You love them, but don't take our word for it. Definitely go and check it out yourself. You might need a snack for workout. You might need a late night snack, or if you're out in these ATL streets and this traffic gets you and it's a hot mess, this might help to keep you calm. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15, and you can get 15% off your first order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON15 at built.com. Check out the Chunky Puffs. And you know what you should do as well? Put a note in the comments and let us know how you like them.
Absolutely. Locked On Sports Atlanta family. We are now over 400,750 subscribers. My goodness, we are running towards 5,000 subscribers. Now, if you're listening to what I'm saying right now, you're like, I haven't subscribed. Like, stop being lame and go ahead and join the cool kids and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have 3 shows, 4 people that are giving you that Atlanta goodness each and every day. And we appreciate you for the people that have done so. And if you have not done so, go ahead and join the party. But T, this is For the Culture. It is the intersection between sports, entertainment, and the culture. And sometimes what we want to talk about, because that's just how we get down. Today is no different, T. This morning, I was up this morning kind of, doing my normal fiddling around and trying to see what's going on for the day as far as the news of the day. And then I came across this thing it disturbed me. Yes. Yeah, I came across a video of what seemed to be at the time Takeoff from Migos laying on the ground. And you can hear Quavo in the background kind of like going crazy, like, hey, oh my God, so it was, and when I see stuff like this, T, in today's world, I gotta do my research and kind of go down that rabbit hole, so to speak, and kind of figure out, okay, is this true?
Sure.
And then as I started to do that, kind of found out that with a little backstory for those you don't know, they were playing dice at a private party. Apparently, It was for Jay Prince, and the argument broke out, and then Quavo was actually as a part of the dice game, and Takeoff was just kind of sitting around, just chilling, kind of minding his own business, which is who he is as a person. Always been like that, and some shots rang out, and then unfortunately, Takeoff ends up getting shot and killed.
Yeah, and it's really a sad commentary because, like you said, he's the guy, and taking nothing away from Quavo and taking nothing away from Offset, but Takeoff is the last guy that you would expect this to happen to, because he is that no-nonsense guy. Like, nobody was shocked, as we talked about it at the station, and then you start looking on social media. Nobody was shocked that he was an innocent bystander, because that's who he's always been. But the sad commentary is we just live in a world right now where anything absolutely can happen. And whether it's a private dice game or a public dice games are always dicey, no pun intended, because the stakes are always high, because most of the time that's people doing whatever they're doing for That's their livelihood. So even in that space, you don't know exactly who you have in the space and how things might get so like out of control in a matter of seconds. And of course, information is still flowing out. So we don't want to make too many assumptions. But speaking of assumptions, when I say that, I also want to say that individuals, whether they're in the media or whether they are just on social media reacting, be careful about some of the things you say and some of the assumptions you make. Because when we hear things like or see things like the first reaction being, so was it gang related? Wait a minute. What are you talking about? This is the Migos. Like these are the guys who the most you'll hear about them is okay, yeah, you know, Cardi B is
that was it.
Off again, on again, off again. But that's really the most that you've ever heard of them.
From a drama standpoint, that's it.
Exactly. No drama from them. So just be careful about the assumptions you make on how people lose their lives because again, he was just an innocent bystander. Something just went awry in that game, and now a mother does not have her child anymore. A father does not have his child, a cousin, because you know, a lot of times you're so close. And think of those guys. Remember, it reminded me of TLC. Just you know, T-Boz, Left Eye, Chili, right? And the loss that they felt and still talk about today when losing Left Eye. So think about those guys. They have lost their brother, maybe not by blood, but in every single way. And we also need to pray for Quavo.
Yeah.
That's his best friend that he saw die that could potentially have been a result of something that people in his camp started. So let's not make assumptions about, you know, or assume that it was a negative situation that somehow the Migos were involved in criminal activity or gangster activity. I just want people to watch that narrative because there's a commentary underneath that narrative about those Black males that especially if you don't know what happened in that situation, please watch your commentary and watch your narratives.
No doubt about it. And to kind of add a little bit more to it, to the behind the scenes, like Quavo is Takeoff's uncle, and Offset is is Quavo's cousin. So these guys are family, like real family. You know what I mean? So that's why I say Quavo is probably going to live with this. Being the oldest out of the group, he's going to live with this for the rest of his life because he was actually there and saw it. So, you know, to see a family member like that lifeless, like I understand what that is, and that's why it's imperative for you all, people who are out there making comments and making assumptions about what went down. Y'all have to listen to my girl T, because you don't need to be putting stuff out there like that, because the speculation, the outward speculation is it's a lot. It's so unnecessary when you think about somebody losing their life, especially as soon as it finished up after it happened. Like you don't even have all the facts of what even happened, so you already speculating. So, but yeah, so the conspiracy theory people, please, y'all just need to stop and just think about what you're saying. And I know that's hard for some people, but think about what you say before you say it or tweet it, because a lot of people are looking for stuff like that to feed into and start having conversations about, and that's not what we need to be talking about right now.
Especially even because people who are in their extended family, like a Trae Young, are impacted by this, because Quavo is essentially his best friend. And by default, then that means you're probably pretty darn close to Offset and Takeoff, right?
Of course, yeah.
So at the end of the day, you're also looking at a guy in Trae, and I just kind of thought, like, you know, my mind went a little bit extended there, but you lost Kobe, somebody who was close to you, right? And that was a tragic situation, gone too soon. Now we got, you know, Takeoff, tragic situation, gone too soon. So again, be really, really careful and just give people the opportunity to like breathe and grieve and wrap their minds around the fact that a 28-year-old young man, because that's still very, very young, is gone. And literally somebody said it best. I think it was our guys, Andy and Randy. We're thinking about it from an Atlanta perspective because they are Atlanta. You know, they're like no doubt, Atlanta all day, every day.
Represent,
really, these guys are international. These guys are internet. They made a footprint across the world. So it's really something that is disappointing. I hate that, but let's just remember that a life was taken regardless of even why It was taken. A life is definitely gone. And like you said, just prayers up for the family, the friends, and anybody who was really, really intimately and personally impacted by the death of Takeoff. And may he rest, may he rest, may he rest in peace.
Rest in peace indeed. And we want to thank y'all for checking out ATL Day Ones today. Make sure you check out Locked On Sports today, and we will see y'all tomorrow.
Absolutely.